everybody. Welcome back to episode 120 of the Risky's Radio podcast, your home for horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. I'm your host, Brodinky. With me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Schmidt. Schmidt, what's up, bud?
Not a whole lot, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. You know, it's rare that we record on a day off, so I feel like I have a little bit of energy, a little pep in my step. The kids are sleeping out tonight. So,
I love it.
yeah, baby. Ready to do have ourselves a good conversation. I think we have a really interesting topic, kind of based off a lot of recent happenings, but it's a little bit almost like you could play along at home if you really wanted to, but really fun. Other than that, just plugging away at it, man, chipping away at the old block, if you feel me.
I do. I do. Yes.
How about you? What's going on?
I mean, nothing too crazy, man. Getting ready for we're throwing a party here at the house on July 4th, so things are getting in final preparations. My wife begrudgingly has signed on for this party.
Okay.
So I will be hosting it. It'll be our first 4th of July party. Kiddos are excited. They're ready to grill out and as my daughter says, do a camp out instead of cookouts. But she's learning, but she's excited. We're gonna have a bunch of people over, do some stuff for the 4th and celebrate America's birthday. So I'm very excited for that. You?
That's great. Yeah, no, just kind of the same. Just enjoying the summer, getting out as much as I can. Pool, beach, all that good stuff. Also,
Tis
just
the
trying to,
time. Tis the
yeah,
time.
trying to keep the lawn green and stuff. The stuff you put on the back burner, and then you're like, holy crap, my yard is a barren wasteland. You roll up deep and pull up to the house one day, and you see a tumbleweed, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah, I mean, I would say I know what that's like, but I'm kind of one of those like lawn Nazis, and like I'm like, yeah, I got to fertilize, I got to do this, I got to
yeah,
do that, and I'm like, I try to mow the grass like once a week, and I don't know, I just love the smell of fresh cut
yeah.
grass.
Well, it was weird here because it was a very wet spring, and it was pretty cool. Like it was mostly
Yeah,
honestly 50s and low 60s for most of the spring up until mid-June.
yeah,
And it was really rainy. So like you didn't even think about, oh, I don't have to water the lawn. I was like, no, it's not
yeah,
drying
yeah,
out or
yeah.
anything, but it's just, oh my gosh, it came on real quick. And then today I was like, oh, it's a little dusty in here. I gotta pick
It's
it
like
up.
I'm gonna have to put the sprinklers back on.
Yeah, for
Yeah, no,
sure.
same for us too. I mean, we've had a unusually wet spring going into summer. Still, it's carrying over, and it's been good because I haven't really had to run my sprinklers, but maybe once so far this entire time, which has been phenomenal for Texas. Normally, we're like, I'm gonna break some laws and go against my city's ordinance and water on days that I shouldn't just to keep it alive. But so far, I haven't had that
Just
problem.
set up the old irrigation rig.
But they're monitoring now. It's crazy. Like they've changed all the times for watering and like how long you can water. It's kind of insane, but whatever. I just love that I pay money every single month to have water access, and these people tell me when I can use it. Love that.
You see,
That's
you have to
fun.
deal with the old HOA.
It's not even the HOA, it's a city.
Oh, okay. Wow.
It's literally the city is like, hey, you can only water between these hours or these hours. And if we catch you watering on off days when you're not supposed to, we will fine you. We will add it to your bill. Like it. They're going crazy. My wife has been saying they're sending out like patrol cars to like monitor people's addresses and stuff to different neighborhoods. I'm like, these people have way too much time on their hands to be telling me how to use my water when I want to. So there you go.
You're like, oh,
Government policies at work.
I just happened to fill my kid's swimming pool and dump it on the lawn just now. Ah,
Just it's like, what if I wanted to run the sprinklers for the kids to play in on the 4th of July? Is that going to
you're
be,
like, this isn't grass watering sprinkler. This is a
yeah,
fun sprinkler. Don't worry, it's
this
two
is
different.
this is this is something I connected to my garden hose. Like Jesus. Anyway,
Who doesn't love more government? I mean, come on,
exactly. That's right. That's exactly how I feel about it. It's like, I love being told when I can use the things I pay money for.
for sure. Yeah. Before we get into it, I'd like to just give a quick shout out to our new patrons.
Yes,
Um,
already so quickly.
yeah, so that's been cool. Yeah. For those who don't know, um, the Schmitzer and I discussed. We wanted to set up a little patron program. Nothing crazy. What happened was, I mean, throughout the course of having the show and the now 120 episodes, right? People have always been like, "Oh, is there any way I can, if there was a way I could support the show, I would, or if there's something I could do." I'm like, listen, I don't want you to just like donate money for no reason or anything. You know what I mean? But like, we have subscriptions every month that we have to pay in order for recording, in order for our hosting, um, little things like that. I mean, I'm sure a travel mic would be nice for you, as I kind of jokingly hinted at, because
I saw that on
whenever
the
you're
post. I was
whenever you're
laughing out loud.
traveling, he's doing the TikTok influencer, and he's holding up the wired iPhone mic to his mouth, and I'm like, dude,
Stop.
I gotta get this guy a
Stop.
lapel mic or something. You know what I mean? But
Stop.
but at least I don't feel awkward in that sense, in that it's going into the show. You know what I mean? It's not like
Yeah.
we're not taking money, putting in our pockets or anything like that. But I definitely, little things here and there that I would love to upgrade about the show is like, why not? And again, I didn't really set tiers or anything. I made one tier, $2 a month or whatever. But we've had a bunch of people sign on. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to anybody else who's interested. But yeah, it's just something to help us kind of move things forward as we progress and as we kick into the next 100 or so episodes.
Sky's the limit. We're just gonna keep
Yeah,
going until you guys tell us to stop. So
yeah. Well, that's what I said. I said until we get sued or the wheels fall off, I said we're just
yep.
going to keep doing this. So, I think the folks out there appreciate it, because we are sort of the off color podcast, I guess you'd say. Like, you're really not going to get this anywhere else. Let's be real. I mean, there's not a lot of folks doing stuff like this, because there's no money in that, right? There's no brand sponsorships. There's no free stuff. There's no, you know, sponsored ads or content or whatever.
Yep.
There's no free watches sent to you. And that's all right. Like, where, we didn't set out to do any of that.
Nope.
But again, that's probably the only reason you're going to get a lot of the topics that we talk about, or a lot of the ideas that we talk about. And it's not like we set out just to be controversial. It's all of this stuff is embedded in honest opinion, and it's just that it's opinion, and that's all right. Like, we just always wanted it to be, the only biases in the room to be our own, and you kind of accept that's going to happen when you have a show that's largely based on opinions. You're going to have your own biases and whatever. But at the end of the day, we wanted to always have a show that people could come back to and say, listen, whatever the hot topic of the week or the new releases are, like, somebody's going to give me a real piece of feedback here. It's not going to just be, oh yeah, no, this is great. Why not? Like, this, what a value proposition, blah, 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 there was a lot of that floating around, especially I guess when watch podcasts caught on. I was kind of nauseated by that. Like, that was one thing that I said, okay, if I ever have a podcast, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not doing the just high praise
Sure.
for no reason. Let me just say
For
everything is
sure.
amazing. Like, I almost wanted to come out of the gates with our first episode and just make a complete troll episode where we were just like, that's great. That's phenomenal, right? And then like the second episode, just like rip it all down and be like, no, none of that was true. But if
Here
I
we are.
told you that that was our episode, you would have believed it, because that's what everybody else is giving you.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
um, so that's why I feel like it's just something I wanted to do to sort of move us
No,
along.
I mean it's a natural progression of the show. We need a little bit of support, and $2 a month. If you guys are willing to join in onto to the Patreon, it's kind of weird to say that, but to join in on the Patreon, we would certainly greatly appreciate it. It all goes back into the show,
Right.
and
Correct.
at $2 a month, I mean, we're not really asking for a lot. If you do want to do that, again,
Right.
it's
It's no
completely up to
pressure.
you.
Yeah.
No pressure, but it goes back into the show, and maybe I can get a lapel mic or something. Who knows? Instead of using my janky 4-year-old Apple iPhone corded headset, but it's fine. Regardless, we appreciate that some of you have already signed up and sent us messages that you've done so. So thank you so much for that. It's amazing to see the response, and we really truly and sincerely appreciate it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Right. And people are always like, hey, when are you coming out to wind up San Fran or Chicago? I'm like, well, you know what? You never know. You get enough patrons, maybe book a couple flights out of it. But
Yeah, there we go.
yeah,
There we
that's a
go.
pipe dream. That is a long way off, my friend. But we
Who
shall
knows?
see.
Anything is possible. Anything is
No,
possible.
of course, of course. And like I had put up in the post, man, our our listeners are the diehards because you can tell because they always show up in the DMs and stuff, and they're always like, dude, I feel the same way. Like I
I
know,
love our
like
listeners.
I can't believe that this is so, one sided or sugar coated or whatever. And like somebody had to say it. I'm like, yeah, might as well be us. And that's
It's fine. I will bear that cross. That's fine.
yeah. And so right now, like I said, that's the only tier, and it doesn't really do anything as far as like perks or anything, but that's just right now. Again, down the line, maybe we put some of that money into merch or some swag drops or something, and we'll see. But yeah, just kicking that off. Thanks again, everybody who signed up, and yeah, we're just gonna keep rocking it until hell or high water.
Love it. Love it.
All right. I guess we can get into the new stuff this week. We'll kick it off with Oris. I mean, I've been saying that they've done largely Aquas, right? That's kind of where they've been at for the past, I want to say like year or so. But
Hmm,
I
hmm.
and like I say, I prefer Diver 65 to Aquas just stylistically myself personally. And they're giving us one here. It's got a green dial, it's got the caliber 400 movement, 38 millimeters, no date, right? And it's got their bracelet and everything, and it comes in it's got a steel bezel, it comes in the package you're all familiar with. Um Nice release. I mean, I know a lot of people wanted a caliber 400 in the 65, which is really cool. I would like to see more of this, and then let's keep it moving. You know what I mean? Like we know what this watch is by now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I'm not saying it's a bad watch, it's a good watch, it's a great watch, but like you said, you prefer the sort of Art Deco one to this one. um I like it, I think it's cool, but I would like to keep the ball rolling here.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, it's just one of those things that, like, for me, it's a tried and true design. We love it, but I like the older version of it, and I wish that design would come back or continue within the line. It's kind of this like more pseudo Submariner type vibe on the current Diver 65s, and it's
Yeah.
just, for me, it's not where it's at. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right, and what's funny is actually transitioning into the next release is so the next one up is Yama, and Yama is kind of running with that design that you like so much in a way, right? They have a new diver out. It's the skin diver. Um, it's got their micro rotor movement in it, and it's a gray bezel, gray dial, and it has that Art Deco look that you do like with uh the different numerals kind of boxed in inside the
Hmm, hmm.
indices. It comes on that fish scale bracelet, and these are cool. And I think we've spoken enough about Yema on the show and sort of their history, and we know that they're kind of like that zombie brand type of thing. But they've switched hands a few times as far as ownership goes and everything. And we talked about how even at one point, I think they were owned by Seiko, which was funny enough. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they are a French brand, and they're out doing their own thing, and I think they put out interesting stuff. And I know they're sort of occupying like that micro brand space a bit right now, but they put out pretty good looking watches. They've got a pretty long run, and they've got some innovation. They have the micro rotor movements. They've got some cool designs. I like what they do. And they offer a lot. They offer stuff from mecha quartz up to, like I said, micro rotor. So I think we
And
even saw
and Tourbillon.
Tourbillon. Yeah.
Yeah, Tourbillon. Yeah, I forgot
Yep.
the
Yeah. I
Tourbillon.
saw that wind up. I was like, well, here it is.
I'll say this. I mean, kind of speaking to that funky design that Oris used to have that I love so much. You're seeing it in this new version of the Skin Diver.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the fact that it's a limited edition. It's got kind of like this ghosted effect with this charcoal gray dial
It's a
and
nice shape.
bezel.
Yeah.
The fish scale bracelet looks awesome. And again, when you flip it over and you see and know what's on the inside, you have a very symmetrically designed blackened movement with this beautiful micro rotor. I have to say, like, for a very industrial looking movement, it's quite nicely finished,
Yeah.
and it looks good. It's a serious player, but to do it and do it in a package that really is kind of unparalleled at this price point, like, to create something that looks this good, has that kind of movement, and then to do it at under $2,500 is crazy
It's
to me.
certainly a value, right?
I mean, let's think of it this way: like that's less expensive than like a Nomos these days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's and Nomos for a long time was just like these are some of the most inexpensive in-house movements you can buy from any brand. And now Yama is certainly taking over that mantle and doing it in a much more sporty fashion, which I love. So I'm excited to see it. I like this design. I'm a skin diver sucker, so yeah, it's good. This one is firing for me, so I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving along, Lawn Jeans is a brand we don't always talk about. They kind, they kind of drop things on the sneak.
They do.
You
They
know,
do.
they don't make a huge big deal out of a lot of stuff, but they're expanding the Conquest line. So they introduced sort of the newer layout of the Conquest. It's got the dated six, and it used to have sort of the 12 and the six as numerals, and then stick indices. This one has all sticks going around. Like I said, dated six, and they had some bigger ones in 41, and they have some in
Mhm.
38 in all shades. They've got like a lot that I didn't even think I knew all these existed. Like there's like a coffee shade, there's a champagne, there's a green. They're all really kind of nice, and now they're expanding that even further into a 34 millimeter model for the ladies. You know, but they're very sporty. They come on bracelet or they come on an integrated rubber kind of. It's got the integrated end link on it, and then they even pushed it out to a chronograph as well in 42 millimeters.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they didn't stop with the colorways on that either. They have like a champagne dial with black. They have a white or a silver with green. Like there's a lot going on here. But I'm looking at the prices on these. Like we were just talking about that with the Nomo situation. They're asking 2 G's for these. Like 2 G's for this watch today is really not that
It's
bad at all. Like
yeah,
you think, I
it's
mean, like we always talk about, like Seikos are approaching 14, 15, 1600. Like
yeah, I mean
for 2 grand to
that
get something finished like this, I mean,
and that's kind of the crazy part, right? Because if you think about this, is like Seiko's approaching this price point, but like when was the last time you really heard somebody from the whisk community who were like, "Oh yeah, Longines," you know what I mean? Outside of maybe like a Legend Diver or something like that, but the
right.
the the average core range for Longines is really largely slept on. There's a lot of great pieces within that line, and they've been slowly, steadily refreshing a lot of their major collections to make them much more attractive. Um, just off the top of my head, I mean, we talked about the GMT timepiece that came out a year ago or 2 years ago. Then
Right.
we got it again in 39 millimeters. We had the pilot chronograph version of that come out as well. Then we had the my one of my personal favorite watches that I really want to add to my collection is the Diver GMT that came out last year
Right.
as
Which
part
is
of the
what
Hydra
you were
Conquest
asking for.
line.
Yeah.
Oh man, it like that. It's just the perfect watch. I mean, 40 millimeters or 41 millimeters, true diver watch with a GMT complication in a bunch of different colors, and it's a very well aggressively priced watch at under $3,000. Amazing, amazing. And then this package is no different, right? We had the 41 millimeter versions in the Conquest collection, and now we're getting kind of the ladies version in three distinctive colorways. We have a kind of a spring green or a mint color, and then you have a like a off, not off, but a light blue, and then a traditional kind of pink. The pink one is my personal favorite. My daughter has already earmarked that for herself at some point. So sorry, mom, I had to buy a Longines with a pink dial. But if anybody has connections out there, we're always looking for pink dials for October. So if anybody's got one of these Longines laying around and they're willing to part with one, hit up bro. Maybe we could use it for a giveaway. So just throwing
Yeah.
it
Yep.
out there.
But no, I really like the new layout. And like I said, for 2 G's, right, you have Seiko approaching that. And we talk about it all the time. Oris is not here anymore. Tudor's well above this. I know 2 G's used to be sort of the mark for like the Black Bay 36.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case anymore. So,
No.
and I mean, look, they've made upgrades, so understandably they've moved themselves up market, and they've done so to try to compete with some of the other brands that were sort of held in a higher regard than they were. But I mean, like I said, this entire price
This is
range is uncharted territory. Like
this
it's
is what I
wide
will
open.
say. This is the perfect watch for a partner, right? Like you have a wife, you have a girlfriend, you have a fiance, whatever it might be, that might have a passing fancy or interest into timepieces and you would like to get them more into it, this is a perfect type of watch to buy them. It's from a reputable brand. It's backed by an incredible company. You have the option of doing the dressy version or the sporty version or mixing matching by switching things out. The rubber straps come on sizable deployant. Like these are really nice packages. And it's not a lot of money to get something like this for a significant other and get them into timepieces, get them into watches. They look great. And for under $2,000 or right around $2,000 to do this, depending on which version you go with, why the hell not? Don't buy an old, like 30-year-old, Omega Seamaster that's been beat up by six different people at $2,000 or more. Buy something like this and get somebody started in the watches that could be looking for their first entry luxury piece. This would be a perfect option for that.
Yeah, and the nice part is, we as watch collectors probably don't think about it often enough, but as far as brand recognition, I would say Longines probably for non-Wisp people are probably top 10. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe even top five. Like, they're gonna know Rolex, they're gonna know Cartier, they're gonna know probably Longines, because they're on tons of sponsorships, whether it be golf, horse racing, you name it, they're
yeah,
they're out there. I mean, anytime I've ever told sort of non-watch people that how I'm into it and I like to collect and stuff, they'd be like, oh, like what? Like, I know Rolex and I know Longines. Like it's always like the second or third one out of their mouth.
yeah.
But
Rolex
understandably,
Tag and Longines.
right,
You're
a lot
like,
of people
what?
don't know a lot of higher end watch brands, but
Yeah.
this is one that they do know. Like this is a
Yeah,
very well known
coincidentally they do, and it's
brand
so
name.
strange to me because like I never grew up in a world where like I knew anything about Longines, and then once I got into the watch business at one time, many years ago, we also carried Longines. I was like, that was my first kind of real introduction to the brand. I'm like, how has this brand evaded me for all of these years? It's got an incredible history, incredible design, and the design has gotten even better than when I thought it was years and years and years ago. So I'm happy to see what the brand is. I'm happy to see that it's constantly evolving and in the right way. And it's attracting a newer, younger generation with maybe not as much discretionary income as some of these other luxury brands would attract. And that's cool. You're still getting a great product, you're still getting a great brand, you're still getting a great pedigree, and you're getting modern styling and design and movement technology. Why wouldn't you want to go with this? So go out there, get your girlfriend, get your wife, get your fiance a Longines and get her the new Conquest because I think it looks awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I even remember being a younger whippersnapper getting on the train to Manhattan, and you'd see on train platforms are big places for watch advertisements for some reason. I guess because
Mm-hmm.
commuters might have money, they work on Wall Street or something. But I remember always seeing it, and this was before I knew anything about anything. And I was like, "Listen, I don't know what a long irons is, but like I know the name. Looking at it, like I knew the name. I didn't know what they made or
It
what they
sounds
did."
fancy.
But I was like, long
Sounds
irons. Okay, yeah, sure.
luxurious.
I knew that, and I knew Tissot because Tissot's a big sponsor for Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and believe it or not, Oris actually has a lot of them now in the same spots I used to see the old ones. But it was funny. I remember seeing the old Longines ads, and I was like, I don't know how you pronounce that, but I know it's something fancy.
Yeah. Good old Longines.
Yep, it's funny, funny, funny. All right, sticking with the Swatch group, we can go to the new khaki mechanicals from Hamilton. They're giving us a blue dial. They're giving us a white dial in bronze, and then they're giving us a sterile white dial, I'll call it, because it's white, but it doesn't have the creamy hands.
Yep.
And I gotta say that looks a lot. I want to say better, but it just looks a lot different. It
Yeah.
looks really good and it looks really, really clean because I was trying to figure out. I was like, these say they're all new. I was like, what's new about this?
What's new about them?
What's new
Exactly.
about this? And I was like, oh, it doesn't have the handset. All right, well that there it is. But it looks really like I don't know, stealthy. It kind of reminds me of like a lot of the IWC pilots now because
Yeah.
it's got
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
white on white.
Yeah.
But they're all pretty cool. The blue would go nice on that new Watches of Espionage strap he just dropped. Other folks are hopping on the charity strap game in case you haven't noticed.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. When I first saw these watches hit on Instagram, I think it was last week, towards the end of the week, I was like, wait, it took me like a hot second to realize that they were different and new. And I think that's probably a good thing. This is nothing new from Hamilton. They really haven't reinvented the wheel this year. Even with some of their drops that we really haven't covered, it's just been kind of upgrades or line extensions to what they've already done so well. And this is no different. Like you said, you have the blue version with the blue dial. It's on a blue NATO strap.
Yep.
You do get the faux patina on that one. You have now the white dial in bronze. Okay, cool, great. But I think out of everything, my favorite is this white dial with the traditional Superluminova hands. Um, we haven't seen that before. It it I don't want to say it's revolutionary for the design because it really isn't. But when I look at it, I'm like, I'm immediately drawn to it. And that is certainly a good thing. I love the fact that it comes on kind of like this dark gray anthracite NATO strap. It looks amazing, but it's just very clean, very simple, very minimalist, as the khaki field has been. But this one just looks good. Looks really, really, really good. And if you haven't got yourself a khaki field yet, and you've been waiting for maybe them to ditch the faux patina, maybe this is the option for you because it certainly is. I think for me, either that or I might go blue. I don't know. I'm still torn. Maybe I just go original. Who knows?
Now there was a model, a real throwback that didn't have the patina on it, and that was it had like an olive dial. It's like
Yeah,
the
but this is like an OG or like
oh
an
no, that's
older
what I'm
reference,
saying.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's way back, and I think that's what I like about this one is it kind of reminds me of that one where
yeah,
before they started to kind of dress up this watch because you know a watch like this you think about it, it has military heritage. It's supposed to be in the vein of a lot of watches that people wore when they served, and
yeah,
so you know the faux patina is understandable. It kind of fits the look of what those watches would look like today, but something about this Super Luminova hand model is just it's just very clean. It's very striking. I don't know if it's just the white on white
yep.
or what, but it's nice. It really is. You know, I would definitely want to check one out.
I love these watches. And you have the black one, right? Or you have
I
the white
do.
one?
Nope, black.
I still need to get one. I Every time I see this watch, I absolutely love it. I don't know why. It's so clean, it's so simple, it's so easy. A buddy of mine has this watch. He wears it all the time, and I see this watch a lot when I'm traveling, like at the airport. Like it'll just be on some like random guy's wrist, and I'll talk with him. He's like not really a watch guy, but he's like, I know this is a cool watch, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, you were 100% correct. That is definitely a cool watch, and I've seen all the different variations. Coincidentally, I've seen the brown dial, the
Interesting.
bronze case, and then the OG black the most, which is not the three that I thought I would say. Thought for sure it would be the black and the white, but it's been not. It's been the brown dial and the bronze case, the ones that I've seen the most.
Yeah, well, they're interesting. They're a little bit busy for people, so it gives you something to look at, right? They're well proportioned, and now you're getting the 80-hour movement in all of these. So
Ah, so good,
there's a lot to
so good.
like. There's a
What's
lot to
not
like.
to like? I mean,
And you know what?
that's the
And they
reality.
really haven't changed the price too much.
No,
It's
no,
kind of stayed in that five-ish. I mean, you're gonna pay more for bronze, obviously,
yeah,
but they've
more for
stayed right.
bronze and more for the black DLC or whatever it
Right,
is.
of course, yes. Yeah, but that's to be expected.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and
Ah,
then
I just need to pony up and just buy myself this damn
yeah.
watch. Oh my God. I don't know why I don't own it yet. I love this watch. I love seeing it on everyone that owns one. It just looks so good.
All right, and then we can move on to now. This is interesting because as far as myself and most people knew, Omega dropped a trio of Aquaterras, but really it was much more than that.
Yeah, way more
So
than
we
that.
got to see these black lacquer dial Aquaterras, which are very very nice looking. You know, they've upgraded some fine adjustments, and they put on these flashy new dials, and it turns out that they really dropped like over 10 different models, and some of them are
It's
precious metals, some of them are art pieces, but it who knew, like who knew at all. It really took some some digging to find out about that.
Yeah, they're all on the website. If you go to the Aquaterra section on the website, and the Omega's website isn't the easiest to navigate, but if you're on the main page, you go to Seamaster, you go to Aquaterra, you'll find it. And basically everything that's going to be new will say new in the top left corner. So I'm on the website right now. So obviously we got the trio, the black dials, which nothing crazy. I mean, this is a nice subtle upgrade to what was already previously there. Now we have 34 millimeter, 38 and 41 in black dial without T concept. So there's no stripies on the dial.
Right.
Very clean, very much like the shades from last year. But just glossy black, and it looks so good, so sophisticated. But what I love the most is they've upgraded the bracelet slightly. There's now a micro adjustment system in the
Yep.
clasp, keeping the overall aesthetic from the previous versions, but now giving us that micro adjustment on a 34 millimeter version, on a 38 millimeter version, and also a 41. So we haven't had the shade style bracelet delivered on a full size Aquaterra until now, and it's there. But in addition to that, as you mentioned, there's like, I don't know, 15 or 16 other references that are on the website right now that you can find if you are listening to this podcast and go through them. There's a couple two tones, there's a couple solid gold variations, a couple different dial treatments. There's a lot. And there's even some stuff that's in crazy precious metal, obviously way more expensive than you and I could ever dream of affording for one singular timepiece. But they're there, and I don't know why they weren't communicated as such. But just me digging, looking up information on the black dials when they were launched on Friday, um, there was more stuff out there that I'm like, why is this not being talked about? So I reached out to some of my contacts. Nobody seemed to know anything about these, which is interesting. But we'll see, I guess, maybe as more information or more time comes out or goes on, that maybe more information about these will come out. But just do yourself some research, do some digging, and check out the website under Aquaterra because you'll find a bunch of new stuff that was not there previously.
Yeah, I
But
thought that was
overall,
kind of.
I'm happy.
I thought it was kind of weird. I was looking at these as they came up in my feed, and I happened to notice that on I don't know if it's still there, but I showed you on Hodinky's post for some reason they tagged
Yes.
a Grand Seiko in this post. It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
I guess it's
It
tough times
wishes it
over
was a
there.
Grand Seiko.
Well, no, I mean, with
Or they wish that
without
a Grand Seiko was this.
Danny Milton, it's tough times over there. So
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
who's over at Teddy Baldassar now?
I know, I
Who
saw that.
knew?
I was
Who
like,
knew?
maybe
Yeah,
our
he
paths
was
will
gonna
cross
he
one
was
day.
gonna come here, but we don't have any money to pay his salary. So
Yes, that's right. That's why we're asking for the $2
right,
Patreon.
that's
So
exactly why we need patrons. We need to be able to hire some staff and outsource some of this stuff to them. That or get some. You know what I need? I want a Jamie like on Joe Rogan. I want to have the guy who sits on the computer over there, and I just
oh, just Google's
have him
everything for you.
fact check me all the
Yes,
time. Hey,
yes,
pull that up.
yes, please. It's
Hey,
like you're wrong.
bring up that
It
post.
never
Is it
happened.
still tag Grand Seiko?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that I want a Jamie, so that's what I'm gonna do with the $2 a month.
I wonder how much that guy gets paid.
Dude, probably a ton with how much that either a ton or not enough. Like either he's locked in at the old price when before the show took off and he's making peanuts compared to what the show makes, or they've just taken care of him because he's like the lifeblood of the show as it flows, and
Yeah,
he's they just
I'm
probably
assuming
paid
he's
him out
probably
of
the
nowhere.
latter, to be honest with you. But
I
yeah,
hope so. I mean, for
no, Joe doesn't strike me as that kind of guy.
no, I don't think so either. I don't think
I know people that know him personally, and they're like, no, he's a pretty stand-up guy. Obviously, he's a personality for sure, but yeah, I know a lot of people that like have met him and spoken with him on multiple occasions, many times, and they're like, no, he's pretty chill. So
Yeah, and even he was talking about watches recently. They were
yeah,
talking about Jack Carr was on with him. They were talking about Breitling and the whole sketchy guys were Breitling thing and the sort of just how watches tie into the tactical and the military and stuff. And they were talking about the brand and everything. It was pretty cool. I was like, oh damn,
well, it was funny. I was following him on his Instagram page, and I saw him most recently wearing a summer blue Aquaterra, like that came out last year or whatever, and he was wearing it on his Instagram, like I
wow.
don't know, 4 or 5 posts ago. So it's a new watch to him because that didn't exist but beyond last year.
Yeah, so he had to pick it up somewhat recently.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
those if anybody forgot, those are the sort of like almost blue on blue
Beautiful.
Really nice. They came out, they sort of released everything in that motif at once,
Yeah, it was so good. It was so good.
but really cool. A few of our
Yeah.
friends are looking at Seamasters and in that.
I know. I'm looking at you, fellow podcast bro. Make up your mind already.
Who I'm hopefully gonna meet up with this week. He's gonna be
Oh
in
yeah?
town, so yeah, we'll see.
Nice. You have to let me know how that
Yeah,
goes.
yeah, we will see. Um, yeah. So I think that's it for new drops.
Yep.
Like I was talking about earlier, this topic, it's a little bit fun, it's a little bit thought provoking. For the past, I don't know how many weeks we've seen some new watches put out that are of pretty esoteric designs, I'll say, that are very timely with what's popular right now and sort of playing into a little bit of the fashion edge of the watches as a whole, I guess I'd say. Um, and one thing that we came across when we were talking about them is, one of which is a completely new brand, right? We've seen that the one we
Hmm.
talked about it on here. It's that what is it called? It's not the brutalizer. What is it? The brutalist.
Brutalist.
We've seen that, right? We saw Louis Vuitton try to make another foray into sort of the watches as we know them, not so much the fashion edge of things, but they've tried to foray into, I'll put air quotes, legitimate watchmaking. But with regard
Oh
to sort of
no.
these newcomers, we spoke about it, and I was like, there's it's weird that these things get picked up, and all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, no, this is the new heat, right? This I'm like, I'm like, where did this come from? I was like, you don't know if this put together in like it could have been put together in a sweatshop. You don't know. You know what I mean? That like there's no what I like to call brand equity there, right? Like you don't know it
Yeah, there's no
from a hole in the
cachet. There's
wall.
100%.
You know what I mean? And granted, look, listen, some of the best brands we know started that way, right? Some of the best
Yeah.
micro brands started that way, right? I think about like a brew watches, right? I know
Yeah.
Don started that out of his basement, and that's kind of the joke about when people sort of nag on micro brands is they're like, oh well, it could be just some dude in a basement. Well, yeah, but
Half the
there's
time it was.
there's two sides to that though. There's a dude who's down there, doing all of the shipping and everything by himself and having to deal with QC issues and everything and staying on top of things and doing it the right way. And then there's somebody who is barely communicating. Somebody has a problem, they never get back to them. Maybe they just close up shop and you never hear from them again.
Right.
So there's wrinkles to that. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just weird to me when something pops up and all of a sudden it's kind of passed around the media outlets, as we'll call them, and it's just sort of like instant validation. You know what I mean? And I've
Well,
even
yeah,
seen it, and,
because
and I've
there's
been I've been
reasons for
sending
that.
I've been sending the posts to you as I see them, and it's
Yeah.
like it'll be, oh, check out so and so's watch box, and like there's a brutalist in it. I'm like, all right, kind of weird. Like especially because there's not. First of all, there wasn't that many made. Number
Yeah,
one.
and they just also just like randomly pop up on these people's posts and these watch boxes and just like the most totally organic way possible, right?
Right. It's been a little weird. I've been kind of forwarding them to you as sort of like a trail of breadcrumbs, if you
It's
will.
yeah. I don't understand it and I don't know how it's happening, but I know it's part of the machine, right? Like these are all just things that are not happening so organically, but they're there. And yeah, I mean, somebody bought this thing, somebody's publishing this thing, somebody's posting this thing, and it's getting other people to think that that is somehow like the next thing, right?
Right. And now that sort of kicked off where I'm going with this, in that how does one, I don't want to use the word honestly. I want to, but how does one honestly gain like favorable brand recognition without paying thousands upon thousands of dollars for a spot on Hodinky, right? Like I remember when Halios popped up on the value proposition, right? The Seaforth, it was the light blue, it popped up on the value proposition, and then after that, it really took off. Like it was popular
Yeah.
before that, but all of a sudden it was on there, and then it was like, oh, Halios made it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so it can do that for you. If you're willing to play ball, like that kind of um media notoriety will put you in that spot. But if you're somebody who's, let's say, starting up a brand and you don't have a ton of capital to just pay everybody out the nose to promote your stuff, like how do you go about sort of building a brand in that regard? And like what I was trying to think of what steps you take if you were going to do that, and sort of mentally, I guess you'd say, like almost like on paper, trying to conceptualize how a lot of our friends have started micro brands. We've met enough owners. I've gone to the District Time show, which is a lot of micro brands. I've got a wind up. I'm no stranger to them, but and everybody sort of has a somewhat similar story in that they wanted to share something about themselves and they wanted to bring something to market. But I think it would be interesting to pick a lot of their brains in what is important to them as far as bringing a watch to market, but also putting your name out there and having it stand for something. Right? Like you have so many options nowadays. We have so many, all the time we have new brands popping up. And again, it's for better or worse. I mean, it's good to have variety, but it's also from the consumer end a little bit hard to suss out.
Right.
Right. I
Right.
mean, you talk to people about their manufacturing, you talk to them about the sourcing of things. I mean, we've had people on the show who will tell you that there are places that will source you parts that belong to other companies, and if you want, you can have their stamp
Manufactured
on
from
it,
for the same other companies that you're buying.
and you can have their stamp if you want it,
Yeah, 100%.
which is crazy, which is absolutely crazy. But I don't know if that's better or worse. Like, are you getting something reputable, or are you getting something that does that take drop it down a notch, saying that as a whole, like that whole manufacturing process is not exactly what we're buying into.
Well, it's misleading, right?
Right. That's what I'm
Because
saying.
you think you're spending a certain amount of money getting this type of product, and what you don't realize is manufactured in this respective place, which is also manufacturing the same other things for other micro brands that exist out there. And these are from major Swiss companies, right?
Right.
That are skirting around the Swiss made designation. So it's interesting. It's interesting. But, to your point about all this cachet, it's like, it's got to come from somewhere,
Right.
right? But how do you create that?
And I think that's why we've seen such a social media blitz as far as watches go, as far as new watches, especially. Like you see these crazy social media rollouts, and some of them are weird, man. I think I saw one the other day that was like it was for a watch. I don't think I've seen the brand much, but it was just like it was a hand with the watch on it holding a large Japanese slicing knife, and there was a huge side of salmon, and it had nothing to do with watches, and it just said, "When is the last time you savored a salmon?" or something like that. And I was like, "This is a strange way to put this out there." But like this is
Totally.
like the weird stuff that comes out. But again, I don't know. I don't know if that's better or worse. Like I don't know if this is saying I'm not necessarily going to go the traditional route of, oh, well, we have this kind of steel and this kind of movement, and this, like, you're just trying to make things lifestyle-y, which is fine.
Yeah.
Or if you're in the wrong pool and you're not really reading the room, I'm not sure. But it's definitely been sort of a big influx of new brands, and social media has been the way to do that, right? I mean, I know people who
Yeah, I
have
mean it's
tried,
free marketing, right?
yeah, but I know people who have tried to attempted to sort of build out a page following and then bring something to market.
You don't need
You
to
know,
anymore.
but I'm saying people who try to do sort of what I've amassed, and then one day they're like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I have a watch you could buy."
Yeah.
Now that I have all these
And that's
followers,
the issue, right? Is because now through traditional marketing, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to create a product. I'm going to I'm going to create an idea for a product. Then I'm going to create the product. Then, given how much money I've put in, I'm going to now try to sell the product by marketing it and then listing it for sale. Okay? The problem with this is in a world where there's a lot of competition, an overly saturated market, there's too many people vying for each other's attention span. You're a newcomer with no notoriety, with no prestige, with no cachet, with no nothing. And you're like, hey, I have this product. Please buy me. And everyone's going to be like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but like, I'm not willing to take the risk on that. The challenge is that would be essentially what would be traditional marketing, right? But I think what people are doing now is they're bifurcating the traditional means and be like, okay, I know I have this product. It may be a good product, it may not be a good product. But the only way for me to get my message out there in as many places at one time is I'm going to throw somebody a bone and
Right.
they're going to launch this for me. And then I can just sit back and watch it sell out. It's a bigger investment up front, but the return is you sell all your product,
Right.
right? And I think that's what a lot of brands are okay with doing. And because so many different institutions today are money making machines, they are monetized, they are, you know, um, invested into, they have portfolios now because so many of those institutions are operating in that fashion. They're like, oh, yeah, an extra this much money for sure. I'll write a little 200 word blurb about your brand and make it sound enticing and awesome, even though nobody cares about it. It's a flash in the pan, and at the
Right.
end of the day, it could be a completely crap
I'll
product.
give it the credentials, even though I'm not even sure it has them.
Correct. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. And it's almost kind of a interesting social experiment. Like I wonder if you could bring a watch to market in this way, and it'd be actually nothing, but they would still be willing to position it
Sort of like the Fire Festival of watches.
100%.
For those who've
100%.
never seen Fire Festival, I mean, definitely it's old now, but definitely that's worth a watch.
Yeah.
That is
Those
exactly like what social media blitz marketing does.
yeah. And now you're seeing that it doesn't actually have to be a thing.
Right. You don't even need to have a real product. It could be just be hot air, which is absolutely crazy.
It could very well be that.
Right. Which I guess is sort of like almost like the pitfall in like Kickstarter, right? We know people who they'll
Yeah.
dabble in Kickstarter watches because you can get a pretty steep discount if you see something you really like. But if that never gets off the ground,
You're out money.
yeah, I mean, I think you can get refunded, but either way, I mean, you're investing time, you're losing that money for X amount of time where you could
And
have put
and
it
and
somewhere
you pay
else, right?
for it sometimes way in advance.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Like once you pay for that Kickstarter, that money is gone. It's there. It's in their account to now utilize it as funds, as seed money, if you will, to build their project. Now, as you said, you might be able to get a refund on that, but you could also be waiting 4 years. I've heard a lot of stories about Kickstarter campaigns that don't quite go as well as they anticipated,
Yeah, I've
and
seen
there's
where they get
delays.
delay.
It's delayed, 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 and what you thought was going to be a 6 month or 8 month turnaround time becomes 36 months, 24 months, and that becomes hard because you've already paid that money and you're expecting some type of instant gratification, and it's almost like you just need to sit there and wait and just forget that you paid for this thing and just hope to God it shows up in the mail one day.
Right. And don't get me wrong, there's people who have done this successfully and also are successful and do fine. Like, I think about how Mark from Island Watch, I mean, he everybody knew him from YouTube. He had his own store and everything was plenty successful, and just one day decided he wanted to put out a watch line. All right, like fine, he does well for himself. I know he says he sells out of every line he makes. That's good, but like that is an example of somebody who used their sort of I don't know what you call it, like they're already established um
It's
clout,
notoriety.
yeah, to move a product, which again is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's sort
But
of
the
these
cloud was
people
already
who are
built
right.
in.
There's these people who are trying to jump ahead on that and then just go straight from A to Z instead of making all the stops in between. And it doesn't make me feel good. I mean, it's not something that I necessarily probably pursue anyway. But I see, I read the comment sections. I like to check out what people think about these things. I like to see sort of the general feeling towards how they come out, and you have people who are genuinely interested, and it might not all be hardcore watch people. You might have some budding enthusiasts. You might have some non-watch people. A
Yeah.
lot of times these come out at pretty decent prices because, well, relatively, but decent prices because they're newer brands and stuff, and people are just trying to get them off the ground. But again, this the Brutalist is what, 4 grand, something like that, three
Yeah, I
grand.
mean it's not an inexpensive timepiece at all.
No, to sort of put your faith all into, and I get it. They've done all these big bio things on the dudes behind it and everything, but again, that sort of just comforts you in parting ways with your thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
I don't know anything about manufacturing and stuff, and even then, we've seen how people have skirted the Swiss made. We've seen how people have will put, or even made in Japan, and it's not necessarily made in Japan. You know what I mean? A lot of
Singapore's
times
close
it's
enough, right?
Korea, Singapore, China. I don't know if you feel like one's better than the other, but again, the we've seen. I'm sure you've seen them, but I've seen some insanely good, what I guess I would call super fakes, that people have brought over from Asia, and they're like, dude, check this out, and I'm like, well, I know you didn't buy this. I know that this is not genuine article, because what the hell would you be doing with this? Because it would be like my stupid friend,
Yeah.
but I'm like, damn, this is impressive. Like, it's well made, despite being a knockoff. But if they can do that, why can't they make a watch look really good that maybe isn't that good? Or maybe sort of, I don't want to use the word deceive, but put you
Yeah,
in the
you're dressing it up.
right,
You can put all the focus and the attention onto the aesthetics of the timepiece with delivering a subpar or not wonderful package on the inside. I mean, honestly, it's the Houdinki clock syndrome,
a little bit,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, it was a garbage movement that everyone absolutely abysmally roasted, and yet the outside exterior looked pretty decent, right? But they tried to do something and brought something to market that was subpar, and the industry and the community gave them hell for it, rightfully so. Right? It was a garbage, what, $8,000 clock or something like.
Yes, sir.
It was absurdly expensive. And people were like, okay, well, let's take a look at the finishing. Somebody must have been really awesome to finish this, and it's like busted, old, nasty movements with like an industrial finishing, and it was just horrible and totally not worth $8,000. And they got their butts handed to them, and they should have, because that was a stupid idea.
Yeah, that was the horological heat check, so to speak. For those who don't know what a heat check is, like, let's say you're watching basketball, a guy's on fire, he's hitting every single shot. Next possession down, he just runs down the court. As soon as he crosses half court, he's heaving up a three and just seeing if it goes in. It's called a heat check. That's what that was. They're like, let's just throw this thing out there, see if it goes, see if we sell out of this. 8 grand a
Gotcha.
pop, like bang,
Yeah. But that was also at the point too where they're like, we might just be able to get away with this
Right. No, that was during like
because
the frenzy, that was like the
absolutely,
peak watch frenzy, right? Where people were willing to drop 60 G's for a Daytona, right? Where
which
people
is crazy.
were looking for Tiffany Blue Oyster Perpetuals for 40, $50,000. And I'm like, well, that's a $6,000 watch.
I mean, and it's crazy because like, when you think about this, it's like it could have been executed so differently, right? Like they could have put like a unit sauce movement, something simple, manual pocket watch movement, nothing crazy. You probably could have expanded the barrel to do, multi-day power reserve. If that was what you really wanted to do. There's so many different variations that you could have done this, and yet they used a garbage movement, and the community called them out for it, and they should have. And Houdinki, I don't know if they sold any of those or they got them returned to them or whatever, but it was a huge disaster for them. Certainly a an egg on the face moment, and well deserved, in my opinion. And I love that every single year you roast them precisely on the anniversary.
well, it falls on my birthday, coincidentally, which is
Oh,
awesome,
okay.
which is pure poetry, right? That the Hodinkee travel clock would fall on my birthday.
I
Was
just love that you
released
roast them.
released on my birthday of
I
all the
love that
days of
you
the year.
roast them every
Right.
single year. It makes me chuckle every single time I see the post, and it's been going on for so many years now, and I love it. And that they read it.
Well, the
You
best
know
part
that
was
they
that
see it.
the year after it came out, I put happy birthday Hodinkee travel clock, and Cole Pennington replies, "Please don't remind me." I was like, yes, yes.
Oh man,
I was like, that's so
that is too
solid.
rich.
That's
Too
great.
rich.
That's great.
Please don't remind me. He's like, what the hell are we thinking in this meeting that we could get away with this? And you know what? Cole's like, deuces, I'm at tutor now. See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could
But
probably see the writing on the walls back
yeah.
then too. So
Yeah. And now don't get me wrong. I don't want people to think that I am 100% correlating this new release with exactly what we're talking about here. I'm not trying to say it's a house of cards. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying is that it sets a dangerous precedent for what could come along and try to do the same, try to emulate what they're doing with this.
yeah,
Right?
this is a test.
This could be a perfectly well made watch and everything. Again, I haven't handled one. It fits a lot of the design cues that are very popular these days. It's right up the alley of sort of where the media has been covering, and we know it's sold out, and so it might be a fantastic watch. Again, I'm not going to cast any doubts on it. What I'm saying is that it sets up the next one to be, maybe fill the same void, but maybe in not such a great way.
And the other thing too is like once one brand knows that they can be successful emulating this model, they know it's viable. It's only a matter of time before somebody tries to do something and take advantage.
Right. Cut the corners, right? I mean, we saw it with
Or
you look
even
at
just produce something that's not actually there
right.
and
I mean,
create a
you've
fire
seen
fest.
listen, I mean, in the past decade, we've seen the cryptocurrency market go crazy, right? We know
Yep.
about Bitcoin, whatever. If you've ever even done research into that arena, there have been bajillions of fugazi scams that have been Ponzi schemes and pump and dumps and all this that have
Yeah.
they've presented themselves as, it's always a project, right? It's always air quotes project. It's a great project with a lot of potential, and like there's never a real world use case. It's always like, but it could be this, yeah, but it's not,
It's
and
not.
it's somebody who put some software together and made it work. I mean, we my friends and I know a kid who did it, and we're like, dude, I hope the SEC doesn't come for you one day. Like he didn't completely just make something, like fabricate something out of nothing, but he's like, yeah, I don't really know what I want to do with it, but a bunch of people put money into it. I'm like, that's dangerous, my friend. Like, I'm not comfortable with that. You know what I mean?
It's like, please don't tell me anymore.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
don't need to know
I
anymore.
don't need
But
the government coming knocking on my door because we had a casual conversation on the phone.
right, but it's kind of the same idea. Like there you can bring a watch to market and establish a brand name, but if you're like, oh well, same attitude, I'm not really sure where I'm going with it. I'm not really sure what I'm doing with it, and then next thing you know, you're just like I said, maybe you stop answering your DMs and your phone calls or your messages about issues or replacement parts or whatever, and now ownership experience sucks, and people have these watches, and it's like, what the hell did I buy?
Or you just don't bring anything to market at all.
Right,
That's
just
what I
let it
think
lie.
happened. That's what I think will happen eventually is somebody's gonna make something. It's gonna be like, all right, this is a Kickstarter campaign, all these different things or whatever, and they're gonna take the funds and they're gonna leave. And you're gonna be left holding the bag. Or not holding the bag in this case, because they took all your money.
It's like, well, I'll get it back. Yeah, but what if they just disappear off to God knows where?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the thing that scares me the most about this. And the thing is that's crazy is we are willing to invest into these entities
With good faith.
with good faith solely. Like we are all raised at some point in our lives to be like, okay, you can't just blindly trust people. And now through the internet, we're like, yeah, just gonna blindly trust this guy
Well, it
with my
got
money.
published on this website. Why not?
Yeah, it was published on this website, must be certifiable, must be real, must be good, and therefore trustworthy enough for me to invest my money into it, knowing full well that it could be completely the opposite of that. And that's the thing that scares me the most about this trend. And I guarantee you it's going to continue because for them, this was a good test. This watch has no brand history, no awareness, no marketing behind it outside of the article that they wrote about it. And the guy who created this company, I've never even heard of. I don't know about you.
Yeah, but all of a sudden he's a celebrity. People are like,
He's a
oh, I met
celebrity now.
this
He's a
guy.
watch
I'm like,
celebrity. I'm like,
who the hell is this?
exactly. And I guarantee you he'll be at a Talking Watches episode, or he'll be, at some type of public meeting forum or something like that. He'll be doing an interview
Doing the
or a guest
talk
spot.
at Watch Society in New York, right?
Exactly, exactly. He's just gonna prop himself up somehow, right? And this was the test mark to say, you know what? At the end of the day, this is possible. This can work. And that's a scary thing, man, because that just means that these brands consider us such a brain dead consumer, and all we are to them is money, that they will just create whatever, pay a little bit of extra cash to have some brand prop it up for them, and they will reap all the benefits from it.
But now
And
let me ask you.
we're dumb enough to buy it.
But now let me ask you. In with all that said, what do you think the best move is? Like, do you just do the community outreach thing? Do you just try to get your product? If you're an honest, purveyor, you want to just get your product in as many people's hands and let it stand on its own legs and get it by word of mouth. You
Well,
want
I mean,
to. Are you
I
willing
think that's
to?
the altruistic way to look at it. But I know business is not altruistic.
Right, but I'm saying, are you willing to like? Is there like I don't really know what the threshold is for how much you'd want to shell out on something because like obviously a booth at Windup is a lot of money. A
Yeah,
Hodinky
it's like,
article is a lot of money.
yeah. I mean, I think the booth at Windup is like 20 north of 25,000
Jesus, is
for
it?
the
I didn't know that
weekend.
much.
Yeah, it's quite expensive.
Well,
And I can
especially
imagine
now that it's
and I
blown
can
open,
imagine an article from Houdinki is probably 10 grand, 15 grand,
right?
depending on what type of word count or whatever they're looking for. So, it's not a small amount of money. And if you're a
No,
brand that has nothing, you can't afford to do that. So the people that can afford to pay to play are people that have backing and they have investors. Let's be honest. Okay? And they have this seed money from something else or someone else that is willing to make that expense for them. Not everybody can do that. And I think if you are truly trying to start a micro brand today, one, it's going to be very difficult because it is a saturated market. Two, because now you have big players in the game that know all these connections and they can kind of muscle you around or muscle the suppliers that could be supplying you product as well or supplying you with bracelets or cases or dials, whatever it might be. Those things happen. We've heard them from inside sources as well, right? Um, you may not be able to produce anything. If you're
but
if you're a big enough threat, you may not be able to get even off the ground.
yeah, and I'm just thinking like how would one even go about it if you're not able to just kick out
The
a
only
ton of cash.
the only way to do it is exactly what has been put in place. Either you raise up capital yourself, which for most people is not possible, certainly not in a small period of time, or you do a crowdfunded campaign.
You join your local red bar and start the word there, and then maybe you go out to if you're on the road, you go out to some other ones and just kind of like you just get people checking it out, get some photos going. Like it's tough, like to to do it all on your own. I don't envy anybody who's doing that. It is possible. We've seen it done, but
It's
it's
100%
crazy.
possible.
It's crazy to think like without the machine, how far you can get yourself is really I don't know. I don't really know what the best course of action is there.
I mean that yeah. And I
I
was gonna
mean,
say too, you could also rely on blogs and stuff like that, or not blogs, but like podcasts and things like that. But at the end of the day, most of those podcasts are going to require some type of financial commitment.
yeah, or you're going to
And
be missing your prototype for however many weeks at a time,
yep,
right?
yep,
You're going to be waiting around for a single review, and then you're like, oh, hey, can you ship it over to so and so now, or ship it back to me so I can send it out? And
correct.
you got to get it refinished because the guy beat your bracelet up, right? It's not easy, man. I've had a friend who tried to bring a watch to market, and these are all things he dealt with. We're sending the watch out, getting it back, having to bring it to somebody to refinish it because the person wore it like a jackass or marred the bracelet or messed up the screws. And it's just like, wow, man, like it's such a grind. It's so crazy. It's such an investment. But
And it's insane that just people are like
yeah.
okay with treating people's stuff like that, like without a care in the world.
Well,
You
they're
know
like,
what I
well, I
mean?
want to wear it organically, right?
It's like, well, yeah, but you should also know how to properly size a bracelet without damaging it. Like, like I thought you were a watch reporter. Like, you don't know how to size a bracelet, or if you're not competent, then take it to a jeweler and have them do it. Whatever. It's just me. But no, man. I mean, I think in today's world, it's going to be very difficult to launch companies like that unless you have financial backing, unless you are able to pay to play, and it's difficult. I mean, the ways of how we consume media and how our attention span is garnered is completely different now than even hell 6 months ago, even hell a year ago,
Yeah.
right? So that's gonna be a challenge. But let's say you do get something. What's the next step for you?
Well, I think it's always tough because if you have a tried and true design that takes off, right? Do you build on the one, or do you try to introduce the second one right away, try to catch lightning in a bottle again?
Yeah.
Or do you build on the same one and then run the risk of people saying, "Oh, they're just a one trick pony. This is all they do. This is all they have."
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also going to depend on monetary resources, right?
Yeah, I mean
Because
that
as we've
always goes
talked
back to
about,
that.
with a lot of our friends that have done this in real life. They're like, I can't really start my second project until I sell my first project. You know what I mean? Because I need the money from the first project to fund the second project, and so on and so forth. In many cases, and that's why so many of these micro brands do small production runs. Like even brands that are more notable, like Oak and Oscar,
Right.
right? Like, I mean, how many pieces do they release every so often? A few hundred, maybe 1,000. Like it cannot be that many. I had a buddy that just picked up a Humboldt GMT in Chicago at their store, and he's like, there was like two people here. It's like one's a sales guy and one's the watchmaker. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. And he's like, it was a great experience because I got to like buy something from somebody that was like felt like a neighbor. You know what I mean? And I know it's a good product, but it was just like to see it at that scale is like it's completely foreign to what I'm used to when I buy a watch, at a big brand store or corporate store or something like that, right? Where there's just massive amounts of inventory and things.
Right.
So he's like, it was very different, but he's like, I'm glad I was able to experience it. But, you know, in many cases, they're only producing so much because they don't want to be left with all of this excess in the event that it doesn't sell. So it's interesting, but I mean, you could always do what Rolex did many, many years ago. Because it's interesting to think about Rolex today as a company, but many years ago, they were a micro brand before that term even existed. Hans Wilsdorf, who started Rolex, didn't know anything about watches, but was very good at marketing and was very good at supply chain. He found a guy to make dials, he found a guy to make cases, he found a company to manufacture their movements, and he would place everything together with Rolex on the dial. And he would sell it as his own. By today's definition, that is a micro brand,
Yeah.
right? Is you are not the manufacturer yourself. You have suppliers that supply you with product. You go into exclusivity deals with them, and that's what ended up happening with his movement manufacturer, Eigler. He went into exclusive production with them. So basically, they existed as a separate entity from Rolex, and they went into an agreement that whatever movements that they would manufacture, they made them solely for Rolex and no one else on planet Earth. And it was all the way up until that, and that was the case all the way up until like 2001 or 2004 when the Iger family officially sold their movement manufacturing workshop to Rolex. And then at that point, Rolex finally made in-house movements, but that's a different story. But the idea was like by that definition, that would be a micro brand today. So what Rolex did to make them very successful and marketable is they just repurposed the cases from each of their different lines to make the next collection. And that helped cut down on R&D and production
Right.
costs because you were just essentially repackaging what you had already designed into a different model. And I mean, that's kind of crazy, but that's exactly why a Submariner looks like a GMT Master.
It sure does. Yeah.
It's kind of why it looks kind of like an Explorer 2. You know what I mean? It's like all these cases were loosely built and designed off of one of the other versions because that was a way for them to cut down on production costs and development costs and produce a viable product that they could get to market and get to market very quickly. One thing that was unique about Rolex at the time is they were very quick to pivot outside of the industry when the industry was kind of getting locked into these certain trends because they were very new and very independent and very mobile. They could bring things to market a lot faster and quicker and anticipate the client's needs sooner, which even still today we see with many micro brands. But now they're part of the machine as well, so that's not necessarily the case anymore. But you have to give them credit. They were one of the biggest innovators in the industry for many years until they just said, you know what, we don't need to innovate. We are the crown, we are the king, and we are where we are now because of it.
That is very interesting. I didn't know all that.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. I mean, we don't really talk too much about crazy watch history, but it's certainly out there. It's information that you can find through Google searches and things like that. But it's quite an interesting history.
All right. With all that being said, I think for the fun part of this, if you could bring a watch to market, what do you think it would be like? Whatever, design wise, anything.
I mean, it's kind of funny now because I've always wanted to do this, but like I've had this idea in my head for so many years that like now it's like I know I have no way of doing this, but I've had a name for a watch. I've had somewhat of a design for a watch for years and years and years and years. And I don't even want to say it because like I know somebody's going to copy it and
Well, no,
just be
yeah,
like,
you can't put it out there like that.
yeah.
But
But I'll tell you off air about it. But obviously, you know, it's kind of crazy now, but it's ubiquitous. It'd be a diver. But like 10 years ago, like there was very few of those micro brands that were producing divers, so like it was perfectly fine. But like now everyone's first watch is a diver.
oh yeah, for
So it
sure.
just seems so basic. Um, but I've had the name for years, and it's so funny because like whenever I see these new micro brands come out, I've never seen them use this name. And I'm like, I'm just waiting for the day where somebody does. And it hasn't happened yet.
All right.
So
I think, and I talk about this even when we talk about new watches, right? I always talk about how I wish Oris would go back to the big crown.
yeah,
And
pointer dates,
yeah,
things like that. Yeah.
I think I guess I'll use the word adventure watch is very underserved these
I
days.
was gonna say you're like the field watch, adventure
I
watch. I
would
could
love,
totally see
yeah, I
that.
would love to drop something. Maybe I'll do an a nod to the Alpinist, which I like so much. Maybe I'll do the internal rotating compass bezel or something.
Yeah.
But I just think, listen, watches are funny because they have practical uses, but you don't have very many opportunities to use them in that practical form, right? If you have a dive watch, you're gonna have to attain a ton of knowledge and spend some money to learn how to get down there to use it properly,
Sure.
right? I don't even want to talk about pilots' watches, right? you're not using it, you're not using it for that reason,
No,
right? But what is hiking cost? What is
it's free.
wandering cost? It's free, right? So somebody could hypothetically use those appropriately for next to nothing, which is cool, right?
I've
So
never
I
thought about it that
I
way, but
think
yeah.
having an application that people can use and it being something that anyone can use is a cool idea,
Yeah.
right? Everybody always goes back to, oh, soccer is the most popular sport in the world. Yeah, soccer is also the most basic sport in the world to play. All you need is a ball, right, and some semblance of a goal. You don't need hockey skates and pads. You don't need a glove and a expensive bat and an entire field, right? You need a ball and some people, right? And so it's a similar idea in that all
Hmm.
you need is a place to wander and some feet to take you there, and you can get it done. So right there, you have the biggest market already built
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in my
yeah,
opinion, as far as um, hypothetically using the watch for its intended purpose. Again, most people don't do that. Most people don't care. They just
yeah,
want a
yeah,
good looking watch at a decent price and something they can wear and have fun in. But
yeah.
but I do think there is something neat about being able to use it appropriately, and with sort of the travel game being so popular as it is, I think it could be practical enough in that you have right Airbnb's all the rage, right? The people who love to document themselves going to all these places, Yosemite and Denali and all this other stuff, right? Well, you know what? At least you know what direction you're going in,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
At least you can use your watch for something practical, which I think is neat and something you really don't get that many opportunities to do anymore.
yeah. It was
So,
fun. It was funny that you mentioned that because like I was on a family trip in the middle of nowhere in a state that I never thought I'd find myself in my entire life, and just walking and just like finding a trail and just walking the trail and just doing something like that I would never do and just having so much fun just doing it. This whole idea of like wanderlust, right? Like you just go and you just do and don't really know where you're going, don't really know how you're going to get there or where you're going to end up, but just the idea of taking the journey to do it and just going through the process of doing that thing was so therapeutic and very interesting in a way. And I can totally see why people just walk. You know what I mean? Which is so foreign to us, especially if you live in the city. It's like you don't walk anywhere or do anything unless you have to do something physical, right? But just that notion of being able to go is just like so interesting. But I can see that. I can see the appeal for that.
but that's the fun part of the whole shebang, right? You actually get to design something, you get to put your name on it, you get to put, make it exactly to your spec, right? Sizing, movements, thickness, bracelet design, clasps, all that good stuff. That's a ton of fun. I mean, I think you get to really put yourself into your product, which is neat. But yeah, it's definitely I could see why it's such an intriguing prospect for so many people.
Yeah.
But I also think it's just very intimidating,
Oh,
especially right now.
it'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
It'd be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Because there's just so much to lose and so many things that could go wrong. I mean, and we've only scratched the surface. We haven't even talked about design. You haven't even talked about, bracelet finishing, case finishing, water resistancy,
Right. Working with a
tolerances.
manufacturer where you got to kick the design back and forth. And oh, you know what? We did it like this. We don't think we can get it any thinner.
Yeah.
We could add a beveled edge, blah blah blah. It's always I used to watch this happen and I was like, wow, man, this is so involved.
Yeah. Movement technology, like what movements are we using? Japanese? Are we using Swiss made? Are we using Chinese? Like what version of those are we going to stand behind? Who's going to service these things? What's the packaging going to look like? Because everyone wants a fancy box, even
Right.
though we all just store them in our closets anyway, never look at them after the day we open the watch. All of these things matter, and then we have to be able to ship this out to consumers in a relatively decent amount of time. Um, that's a lot, man. It's a lot. It's
Mm-hmm.
crazy, and I get it. You know, I used to always be frustrated with Bill Yao, the guy who runs Mark II, MK2, and I love his products. I always loved his watches, but I was like I always miss the drop because like you release like 200
Yeah. And then they're
and
done.
it's not knowing this like what levels of QC and quality control and all these things that this guy was doing to put these watches to bring them to market and be like this is all I can do. Like this is it. And for him to go from modding Seikos to starting a company and producing cool watches that are nothing too crazy or fancy. It's just like they look good. And, for someone like me, just didn't understand at the time like what it took to to get into something like that, you know? So it's quite interesting now to look at it, knowing what I know and having had those conversations since, like knowing what goes into these projects is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah. So for as much of a damper as we put on it, salutes to all you out there who are fighting the good fight and trying to put out a legitimate product. Godspeed, because
Yes,
the
thank you.
deck is stacked against you. But for those of you, hopefully you do succeed and you can get yourselves off the ground and everything. It's been cool, really meeting a lot of the people. Like I said, I've been district time. I go to wind up every year, so it's been neat, kind of meeting some of the smaller folks and getting a feel for them and what they're putting out there and just seeing how they're going about it, just doing it, trying to do it honestly and put together something nice and market it. It's cool. It's cool to watch, but it's also just it's very scary and just hats off to all of you out there who are doing it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for fighting the good fight and giving us something to complain about on the internet.
Right. But also, I mean, not for nothing, a lot of times, one little innovation or a good design, next thing you know, the big boys are taking it, right? And it's influenced the
100%.
change in the entire design of the industry. We've seen it. I mean,
100%.
it's pretty crazy. We've seen it though.
Yeah. Remember when when vintage reissues were a thing on the micro brand space and all of a sudden
Yep.
big brands started doing it?
All of a
I
sudden,
mean, it's
it's
like
all the
crazy.
rage.
Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah. All right, my friend. I think we'll call it there. I think we've beaten this horse quite a lot. But yeah, no, I think it was a fun discussion. I think it's something that should be talked about a lot more. And again, not that we necessarily tied anyone to any of these sort of tropes that occur within the branding space, but just bringing an awareness of sort of what we're leaving ourselves open to by buying into this stuff so readily. I think it's valuable.
Yeah, just rebel. Just don't just don't buy anything. And you know what? Maybe we just start boycotting our institutions. They're starting to fail us.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I think you're seeing that. I think you're seeing that firsthand. I mean, how many people are relying on sort of third party news and stuff, and as far as releases go, as far as just even just the same old like talking head type of articles that used to happen, right? Three Watch Collection, blah, blah. Like those are all from independent people now,
Yeah.
right? Like the dude from Watchfinder is not a Watchfinder anymore. He's off doing his own thing,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, for better or for worse. And not that I'm 100% on board with the whole sort of influencer news outlet thing, but certain people do it right. So but people eat that up now. That's where they're getting their news from places. I mean, heck, the well-known photographer who I've met a bunch of times is a cool guy. Ty Alexander is like, oh, I love when I find out about new releases through Brodinky, and I'm like, yeah, hey, at the end of the day, every once in a while I break some stuff to her, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I'm bringing something to the table. I'm bringing something to the table for
um,
sure.
but yeah, people some now kind of take their cues from everywhere. It's not just at one point it was basically just like Hodinky and a blog to watch, and that was it.
Yep. Yep.
And, look how much it's sort of branched out, but it's for the better. Like I said, you get the multitude of opinions, you get different coverages, different angles, and again, that's why I think shows like this one are valuable. I think because you're not going to get the perspectives everywhere. You're not going to get
Yeah.
sort of that less than corporate tone on things, and so that's why we do it. That's why we're here. So,
Yeah. It's true.
yep.
It's true.
So we'll call this one, my friend. It's always been a pleasure. Listeners, thank you. Patrons, thank you. For anybody who's interested, our Patreon is patreon.com/Brodinky because it is less cumbersome to write out than Rich Cheese Radio. But
Yes.
I do have
There's
the
that.
the Rich Cheese logo up there, so don't be fooled. It's all under one umbrella there. But we thank you for even checking it out, and yeah, hope to see more of you, and we'll talk to you all next time on the Wrist Cheese Radio podcast. Smith, be good, my friend.
Thank you guys. Take care.
Later.